Okay, so in order to make a circle graph, if we draw a circle, every single circle graph or pie chart or whatever you want to call it that is on the computer is made in a very precise way because they are figuring out the exact measurements to make it precisely perfect. Okay? But if we have a circle graph here, this is where, let's say, I'm just going to draw 25%, we're going to say that's 5%, we'll say that's 10%, and this looks close to 60%. We're just going to guesstimate. But do you see how it actually looks like it's 25% of your circle? It looks like it's 60% of the circle. It looks like it's 5%. It looks like it's 10%. Okay? There is a method to how they get those numbers. Okay? I'm going to show you, dude. Okay? So, the way that it works is they have this really interesting way to figure it all out. So, you have to figure out what we call angle measurements. So you guys remember how we can have angle measurements like this is 10 degrees, this angle's 20 degrees, this angle's 90 degrees, a straight line's 180 degrees. Do we all remember that? Okay. Circles have angle measurements. For instance, how many angle measurements are total in a circle? 360. So a circle adds up to 360 degrees. So every circle that you will ever come across, it has to add up to 360 degrees. So most of the time when you see circle graphs, it's because you guys have found some sort of data, something that you want to represent, and it works really well on a circle graph. So let's say I surveyed a bunch of people about their favorite candies. So favorite candy. Let's say that they could choose between Starburst, Hershey's, Skittles, and M&M's. Those are our four choices: Starburst, Hershey's, Skittles, and M&M's. James, I really hope that you are writing down everything that I am. Because if you are not following directions at all. If I write it, you write it. That is the rule. Okay, so everyone think in your head, out of those four options, which one would be your favorite? Think it in your head. Don't say it out loud. Okay. Raise your hand if you like Starburst the best. Okay, everyone write a 3 next to Starburst. Raise your hand if you like Hershey's the best. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Everyone write a 7. Raise your hand if you like Skittles the best. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 5. Raise your hand if you like M&M's the best. Okay, Riley, your hand was up for Skittles, dude. No, it wasn't. Then you shouldn't have turned around. So everyone change Skittles to 4. Okay, please raise your hand again for M&M's. Okay, 4. Okay, I'm going to add, we're going to add 1 to M&M's to make it 5, and add 1 to Hershey's to make it 8. So we should have 3, 8, 4, and 5. So if you're doing a survey and you figure out that 3 people like Starburst, 8 like Hershey's, 4 like Skittles, 5 like M&M's, and you want to draw a circle graph based off of that data, first thing I need to know is what's my total? 20. That means 3 out of 20 students like Starburst, 8 out of 20 students like Hershey's, 4 out of 20 students like Skittles, 5 out of 20 students like M&M's. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay, once you figure that out, you write your fractions. So I just told you our fractions, right guys? So what's the fraction for Starburst? 3/20. What's the fraction for Hershey's, everyone? What's the fraction for Skittles, everyone? What's the fraction for M&M's? Now, what do I have up here on this example? I have percentages. So what do you think I need to find now? Okay, I need to find my percents. There's a reason I got it to 20. That way the math was easy for us, right guys? Okay, so 3/20 as a percent is what? 15%. 8/20 is what? 4/20 is? 5/20 is? Questions so far? So do you see how they come up with the percentages that they get? The percentages always have to be based off of a fraction. Does that make sense? There's not a fraction, can't have a percent. Got it? Now we have to find what we call the angle measurements. So if I asked you, what is 15% of 360? What would you tell me to do there? What is 15% of 360? What would I do, Riley?
Just 360 divided by 15.
Nope.
You put 15 over 100 and x over, a variable over 360 and cross multiply, and then you would divide what you got off of the cross multiply by 360.
Absolutely. Guys, remember your is over of equals percent over 100? It's exactly the same. Okay, now the trick with this one is I'm going to make it one step simpler so we don't have to do that. All you have to do is take your 360 for every problem, because I want to know what is 15% of 360. I want to know what 40% of 360 is. I want to know what 20% of 360 is, and I want to know what 25% of 360 is. Does anyone know what operation the word of means?
Yeah.
What operation do you think?
Division.
Does not mean division.
Multiplication.
It means multiplication. So whenever you see that word of, it means multiplication. So I want to multiply, and I can't just multiply by a percentage. What do I have to do to that percentage? Make it a decimal. So I'm going to multiply by 0.15. I'm going to multiply by 0.4. I'm going to multiply by 0.2, and I'm going to multiply by 0.25. Does that make sense to everyone? Now, to save on time, I'll use a calculator in class today, but are we allowed to use a calculator on our homework? No. I'll explain your homework, though, in just a second, okay? So, I will type in 360 times 0.15, and we get what? 54 what? Nope.
54 over 360.
Degrees. Because it's going to be 54 degrees of that circle, that angle measurement has to be 54 degrees. And 54 degrees is 15% of a circle. Okay, so then I would do 360 times 0.4, and I get 144 what? Degrees. I will do 360 times 0.2, and I get what? And then I do 360 times 0.25, and I get what? So if I want to find the angle measurements of a circle, this is how I do it. Does that make sense to everyone? Now technically we could use a protractor and we could draw our circles. I mean, you could actually draw your circles. It's actually really, really cool, and it's a lot of fun, but we're not going to do that. So, you do have to know how to find the angle measurements. You do have to know you have to give me fractions to give me those percentages to then be able to figure out this is how many degrees. They're not always going to end up perfectly, are they, you guys? No, we're going to have decimals, things like that. So make sure you always read directions, whether it says to round or not round. Understood? Okay? So, what if I asked you a question like this? Let's do an example. Example 1. Out of 25 students, 12% like Snickers the best. So out of 25 students, 12% like Snickers the best. I want to know how many students like Snickers. So how many students like Snickers? There are 2 ways to solve this problem, and I have taught you both ways. You can use either method that you know that works best for you. So see if you can figure it out for me. Go.
Can we put our work on paper or?
Yep, do it on your paper. What do we get? What do I do? Okay, so I could set up a what? It's not called cross multiplication, it's called a proportion. So I can set up a proportion. How do I set up a proportion? Where does 25 go? It's my of, and then what? I write 12 over 100. So I could solve it in a proportion. I could have also done what? What's the other way? Just told you how to do it up above. I could have done what, Jacob? Perfect. I could take 25 times 0.12. You will get the exact same answer. Either way, it'll work. So what should we get? How many students? 3 students is your answer. Either way you solve it, you will get 3 students. So essentially, guys, circle graphs is all percents of numbers. It is all setting it up this way or doing this. But this way, do you think this is always going to work? No. This only worked because I was given my total, right? What if I'm not given my total? What if I was given 3? What if I said 3 students like Snickers the best? That's 12%. How many total students are there? What if I wanted to know my total? I could still set it up like this. It would be the 3 over x equals 12 over 100, but I can't multiply. I would have to divide, which means I would do 14, not 14, I would do 3, and I would have to divide it by the 0.12. So if I want my total, I multiply, or not my total, if I want my number that it is, I multiply. If I want my total, I divide. But can I set up proportions no matter what? Will the proportions always work? Absolutely. That's why I taught you the proportions, because they will always work. Okay, what questions do I have? Cole.
So like right there, do we have to just do 3 divided by 0.12, or can we also still do the cross multiplying 3 times 100 and then
Well, these are 2 separate problems. These are 2 different ways to solve the exact same problem. So you do one or you do the other, and you should get the same answer for both ways. So you don't have to do both. You pick which one you would rather do, which one makes most sense to you.
Wait, so when you get into the decimal, you do round or you keep separating?
It's whatever the directions tells you to do. You always read the directions. Okay, so what time does class get out again? It's got to be soon, right? 7 minutes? Okay, perfect.